The massive doors of Nexus Prime University slid open with a soft hiss, revealing corridors that stretched like silver veins through the floating academic station. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy moved through these halls, their forms as diverse as the stars themselves. Among the crowd, one figure drew nervous glances wherever he walked. Park Jaiwan adjusted his simple black backpack and tried to ignore the whispered conversations that followed him like shadows. He was 21 years old, average height by human standards, with dark hair and calm brown eyes. To him, he looked completely ordinary. To everyone else in the corridor, he was something far more dangerous. "Is that really the human?" whispered a tall, blue-skinned Aquani student, her gills fluttering with anxiety. Her voice carried the musical quality typical of her species, but now it trembled with fear. "I heard their planet has monsters everywhere," replied her companion, a Klaxian whose large, herbivorous eyes kept darting toward Jaiwan. The plant-like being's leaves rustled nervously as he spoke. "Creatures that eat other creatures while they're still alive." Jaiwan pretended not to hear them, but his enhanced human hearing caught every word. He had expected this reaction. Earth's reputation as a Class 10 death world preceded him wherever he went. Most species in the galaxy evolved on peaceful worlds, where the biggest threat was bad weather or natural disasters. Earth was different. Earth had produced apex predators, and somehow, impossibly, one species had survived them all. The Xenobiology lecture hall was enormous, designed to accommodate 300 students from 47 different species. Crystal beings that looked like living gemstones sat next to creatures made of shifting energy. Insect-like arachnoids clustered in one section, while the ghostly cloud wisps floated near the ceiling. Every species had found their place in the Great Hall, except the human. Jaiwan chose a seat in the third row, trying to look approachable. Instead, a circle of empty seats formed around him as other students quietly moved away. He pulled out his electronic tablet and began reviewing notes, acting as if nothing unusual was happening. Professor Veltar entered the hall with the graceful movement typical of his arachnoid species. His 8 legs moved in perfect coordination, while his 4 arms gestured as he prepared his materials. His large compound eyes could see in directions impossible for most species, and right now, they were focused on the lone human in his classroom. "Today we will discuss the fundamental principles of predator and prey relationships," the professor announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's translation system. "Most civilized species have evolved beyond such primitive survival mechanisms, of course." A student near the front raised her hand. She was a Luminar, her bioluminescent skin glowing soft blue with curiosity. "Professor Veltar, what about species that still maintain predatory instincts, like the human student?" The hall fell completely silent. 300 pairs of eyes, sensors, and optical organs turned toward Jaiwan. He felt his face grow warm, but kept his expression calm and neutral. Professor Veltar's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among his kind. "An excellent question, student hygiene. Perhaps our human guest would care to explain how his species overcame their violent evolutionary heritage." Jaiwan stood slowly, measuring his words carefully. He had practiced this moment many times, knowing it would come eventually. "We learned that true strength is not about being the biggest predator in the ecosystem," he said, his voice steady and clear. "Sometimes survival means knowing when to hunt, when to hide, and when to protect others who cannot protect themselves." The professor tilted his head, a gesture of interest. "Fascinating. And yet your species still maintains those predatory instincts, does it not?" "Yes," Jaiwan replied honestly. "We do. But having instincts and being controlled by them are two different things." This admission sent ripples of unease through the assembled students. Several Klaxians shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while a group of cloud wisps drifted higher toward the ceiling, as if seeking safety and distance. "Could you elaborate on that distinction?" Professor Veltar asked, genuine scientific curiosity overriding any fear he might have felt. Jaiwan considered his words carefully. "On Earth, we had a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. It means that true power comes from having the ability to be dangerous while choosing not to use it unnecessarily." A young Verdani student, her bark-like skin showing patterns of nervous green, spoke up without raising her hand. "But how do we know when you might choose to use it?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jaiwan met her gaze directly, his expression serious but not threatening. "When something threatens those who cannot defend themselves," he said simply, "when there is no other choice left, when being peaceful would mean allowing harm to come to innocence." Professor Veltar's compound eyes glittered with interest. A fascinating perspective on controlled aggression. This concept of protective violence is not well understood among most galactic species. As the lecture continued, focusing on theoretical models of evolutionary development, Jaiwan noticed that the circle of empty seats around him remained unchanged. But the quality of the attention he received had shifted slightly. Where before there had been only fear, now there was also curiosity. When the class ended, students filed out in their usual species groups, giving Jaiwan the space he had grown accustomed to. But one student approached him as he gathered his materials. It was Hygiene, the Luminar who had asked the first question. "Your world," she said in carefully pronounced Common Galactic, "it shaped your people differently than ours, did it not?" Jaiwan nodded, shouldering his backpack. "Earth taught us that the universe does not care about fairness. You either adapt and survive, or you disappear forever." Her bioluminescent skin flickered with complex patterns that Jaiwan was learning to recognize as deep thought. "And you believe this makes your species stronger?" "Not stronger," Jaiwan corrected gently. "Just different. We learn to be ready for things that other species never had to face." As they walked together toward the hall's exit, neither of them realized how prophetic those words would prove to be, or how soon Jaiwan would need to demonstrate exactly what it meant to be shaped by a world where only the adaptable survived. 3 days had passed since Jaiwan's first xenobiology class, and a routine of university life had settled into a comfortable pattern. He spent his mornings in lectures, afternoons in the vast central library, and evenings reviewing materials that would have been impossible to access on Earth. The other students still kept their distance, but the fear in their eyes had softened into curious wariness. Jaiwan was sitting at a study table in the library's quiet section, surrounded by holographic displays, showing molecular structures of alien proteins. The soft blue lighting created a peaceful atmosphere, and the gentle hum of environmental systems was almost soothing. Around him, students from dozens of species worked quietly on their own projects. A group of Christine beings chimed softly as they shared information through harmonic resonance. Several Verdani students rustled their leaves in what passed for whispered conversation among their kind. The emergency alarm shattered the tranquility like a hammer through glass. The peaceful blue lighting instantly shifted to harsh, pulsing red. Blast shields slammed down over the massive windows that normally showed the breathtaking view of space beyond the station. Emergency barriers began sealing doorways and corridors as the university's defense systems activated automatically. Students throughout the library erupted into panic. The cloud wisps immediately dispersed into formless mist, seeking shelter in the ventilation systems. Claxian students huddled together, their large eyes wide with terror. Even the normally composed Christine beings began emitting discordant sounds of distress. "All students and faculty must implement Apex Protocol immediately," announced the university's artificial intelligence system, its normally pleasant voice now cold and mechanical. "A Class Alpha predator has breached all perimeter defenses. Seek immediate shelter in designated safe areas and await military response. Do not attempt to leave your current location." The words hit the assembled students like a physical blow. Class Alpha predators were the stuff of nightmares, creatures so dangerous that entire star systems evacuated when they were detected. In a galaxy where most species had never faced anything more threatening than territorial disputes or resource shortages, these beings represented pure, unstoppable death. While his classmates stood frozen in terror, Jaiwan was already moving. He rushed to the nearest emergency terminal and began accessing the station's security network. His fingers moved quickly across the interface as he pulled up internal sensors and defensive readings. Hygiene, the Luminar student from his xenobiology class, stumbled toward him. Her normally steady bioluminescence was flickering wildly with fear, creating chaotic patterns across her skin. "Jaiwan, what is happening? What is a Class Alpha predator?" Jaiwan's expression grew grim as he studied the incoming data. "Void Stalker," he said quietly, his voice carrying clearly in the suddenly silent library. They are ambush predators that hunt in the empty space between star systems. 12 feet tall, armored carapace that can deflect starship weapons, and claws that can cut through almost anything. A nearby arachnoid student overheard and nearly collapsed with terror. "How do you know so much about these creatures?" he chittered, his mandibles clicking uncontrollably. Jaiwin continued analyzing security feeds, watching as the massive black shape moved through the station's outer corridors with terrifying grace. "Because humans study everything that wants to kill us," he replied simply. "It is how we survive long enough to reach the stars." The Void Stalker was a nightmare made real. Its elongated body was covered in chitinous plates that shifted and adapted to its environment, providing perfect camouflage. 6 powerful limbs ended in claws sharp enough to slice through starship hulls. Sensor organs along its skull could detect heat, movement, and even electrical activity from vast distances. It moved with the fluid grace of a perfect killing machine, leaving destruction in its wake as it navigated deeper into the station. Security drones that cost millions of credits were shredded like paper. Emergency barriers designed to stop battleship weapons crumpled under the creature's assault. The station's automated defenses might as well have been toys. Estimated military response time is 47 minutes. The AI announced with mechanical calm. Professor Veltar's voice crackled through the communication system from his shelter 3 levels below. "All students, remain in your designated safe areas. This creature hunts by detecting movement and thermal signatures. Do not attempt to move until the all-clear signal is given. Repeat, do not." The transmission cut to static, leaving only the emergency alarms and sound of frightened breathing from hundreds of students. Jaiwin studied the security feeds with intense concentration. The Void Stalker had paused outside the medical wing, where a dozen injured students from the initial breach were trapped with the medical staff. The blast doors there had been damaged during the creature's violent entry into the station. They would not hold against a sustained attack. Around him, students from across the galaxy followed millions of years of prey species evolution. Hide, stay still, wait for the predator to pass. Hope that someone else becomes the target. But Jaiwin's evolution had been different. As he watched the creature's movements and analyzed its hunting patterns, something ancient stirred in his mind. Something his classmates did not possess and could not understand. On Earth, sometimes the prey had learned to fight back. And sometimes when they fought smart instead of hard, the prey actually won. The Void Stalker began testing the damaged medical wing doors with its claws. Those students had maybe 10 minutes before the barrier failed completely. Jaiwin stood up from the terminal, his decision made. "Where are you going?" Hygiene whispered, her bioluminescence pulsing with fear. Jaiwin looked at her, and for just a moment, she saw something in his calm brown eyes that made her prey species' instincts scream warnings. Not madness or bloodlust, but something far more dangerous. Purpose. While hundreds of alien students remained frozen by instinctive terror, Jaiwin's mind worked with cold precision. He stared at the security feeds showing the Void Stalker, but where others saw an unstoppable monster, he saw patterns, weaknesses, opportunities. "Look at how it moves," he murmured to himself, studying the creature's approach to the medical wing. "It relies on stealth and surprise, but it has never fought anything that could think ahead." Hygiene watched him in amazement. Her bioluminescent skin flickered between blue fear and green confusion. "You are analyzing it," she whispered. "While everyone else is terrified, you're studying a Class Alpha predator, like it is a homework assignment." "Terror is useless," Jaiwin replied, already moving toward the library's maintenance access panels. "On Earth, we had creatures like this. Not as large, not as intelligent, but the same basic principle. Apex predators that seemed impossible to defeat." A group of Erdani students had gathered nearby, their bark-like skin showing stress patterns of deep brown and black. One of them spoke in a trembling voice. "What happened to those Earth creatures?" Jaiwin's smile was sharp as a blade. "We became better predators than they were." He quickly accessed the station's maintenance systems, pulling up detailed maps of air ducts, power conduits, and structural weak points. The university was more than just a school to him now. It was terrain. It was a weapon. It was everything humans had learned to use when facing impossible odds. The medical wing, he said, pointing at the building schematics on his tablet. It will attack there next. Those injured students cannot run or hide effectively. Professor Veltar's voice crackled through the emergency communication system. Student Park, return to the designated shelter immediately. Your species may have aggressive tendencies, but this creature has destroyed entire colony worlds. Professor, Jaiwin replied calmly into his communicator. Have any of those colonies ever had a human defending them? A long silence followed. Then the professor's voice, uncertain now. Well, no, but the statistical probability of success. Statistics do not account for human stubbornness, Jaiwin interrupted. Trust me. He began gathering supplies from around the library. Maintenance tools, cleaning chemicals, emergency lighting units, even decorative items that could be repurposed. To the watching students, it looked like random collection of useless objects. But Jaiwin saw improvised weapons, distraction devices, and tactical advantages waiting to be exploited. You cannot fight that creature, Hygiene protested, following him as he worked. It has killed thousands of beings across dozens of worlds. People who ran from it, Jaiwin said without stopping his preparations. People who hid from it. People who waited for someone else to save them. He shouldered his improvised equipment pack. That is not what humans do when others are in danger. The security feeds showed the Void Stalker had reached the medical wing. Its massive claws scraped against the damaged blast doors, testing their strength. Sparks flew as metal began to give way under the pressure. 42 minutes until military response arrives, the AI system announced with emotionless precision. Too long. Those students in the medical wing did not have 42 minutes. They had maybe 5 before the doors failed completely. I am going to help them, Jaiwin announced, heading toward a maintenance shaft that would let him move through the station unseen. Where exactly are you going? Hygiene called after him, her voice tight with fear for her strange human classmate. Jaiwin paused at the entrance to the maintenance tunnel. For a moment, the hundreds of alien students watching him saw something in his calm brown eyes that made their prey species' instincts trigger warning signals throughout their nervous systems. It was not anger or hatred. It was something far more dangerous than emotion. It was a focused determination of an apex predator that had identified its target. I am going to remind that creature, Jaiwin said quietly, his voice carrying clearly in the silent library, that humans did not climb to the top of Earth's food chain by being the biggest or the strongest. We got there by being smarter, more adaptable, and completely unwilling to let monsters hurt innocent people. He disappeared into the maintenance shaft, the metal grating ceiling behind him with a soft click. The tunnel was dark, cramped, and filled with the mechanical sounds of the station's life support systems. But Jaiwin moved through it with the confidence of someone who had spent his childhood exploring similar spaces. Behind him, 300 alien students stared at the security screens, showing one small human moving purposefully through the darkness toward an unstoppable killing machine. The silence in the library was complete, except for the distant sound of emergency alarms. Has he lost his mind? Whispered Klaxian student, his large eyes wide with disbelief. Hygiene watched the screen, showing Jaiwin's progress through the maintenance tunnels. Her bioluminescent skin pulsed with complex patterns as she considered the question. No, she said softly, her voice filled with growing understanding. I think he is exactly what his species was designed to become. On the screen, they could see the Void Stalker had begun tearing through the medical wing's blast doors. Metal screamed as the barrier started to fail. In just a few minutes, the creature would reach the trapped students and staff. But now something was moving through the station's hidden passages. Something that had spent millions of years learning how to hunt the hunters. The real predator had entered the game. The maintenance tunnels beneath Nexus Prime University formed a hidden network of service corridors, power lines, and ventilation shafts. In the darkness, Jaiwin moved with practiced silence, his enhanced human hearing tracking both his own progress and the distant sounds of destruction above. The Void Stalker was learning the station's layout with frightening speed, but it hunted like an apex predator from an open world. It expected prey to run in straight lines, to hide in obvious places, to follow predictable patterns of fear. It had never encountered a human before. Jaiwan species had evolved alongside other apex predators. They had learned that size and raw power meant nothing without intelligence, cooperation, and the willingness to turn the entire environment into a weapon. Moving carefully through the cramped spaces, Jaiwan reached the Medical Wing's power distribution center. His first move was simple but effective. He cut power to the ventilation systems, forcing the Void Stalker to rely more heavily on its thermal sensors. Then he began releasing chemical vapors from cleaning supplies he had gathered, creating false heat signatures that would confuse the creature's hunting instincts. Through his communicator, he could hear the panicked voices of his classmates back in the library. "It is moving away from the medical wing," reported Hygiene, monitoring the security feeds. "The thermal readings are confusing it. Whatever you did worked." "That was only phase 1, Jaiwan replied calmly, already moving to his next position. "Now I need help. I need volunteers." Professor Veltar's voice cut through the communication channel, sharp with alarm. "Absolutely not. You will not involve other students in this dangerous plan. This is suicide." "Professor," Jaiwan said with infinite patience, "humans are pack hunters. We work together. I cannot do this alone." To everyone's surprise, Hygiene's voice came through the communicator first. "I will help you." Then a Christine student spoke up, their harmonic voice ringing with determination. "We will assist as well. Your approach is logical." More voices joined in. Not many, but enough. A few brave Verdani offered their chemical abilities. Several Cloud Wisps volunteered their shape-changing skills. Even some of the timid Claxians were willing to contribute when given a real plan instead of helpless waiting. Jaiwan began coordinating his improvised pack with the precision of a battlefield commander through the communication system. He explained how each species could use their natural abilities to create a coordinated defense. "Hygiene, your bioluminescence can create visual distractions that will overload its optical sensors. The Christine Collective can generate harmonic frequencies that will disrupt its spatial awareness. The Verdani can release pheromones that will mask human scent signatures. This is unprecedented," Professor Veltar whispered in amazement. "Interspecies cooperation at this level, under these extreme circumstances, has never been documented." "It is what humans do," Jaiwan replied, checking his improvised equipment as he moved into final position. "We make allies. We adapt to any situation. And when something threatens our pack, we eliminate the threat." The Void Stalker had followed the false thermal signatures deeper into the station's central processing core, exactly where Jaiwan wanted it. The creature was powerful and intelligent, but it was following instincts developed for hunting isolated prey. It had no experience with coordinated group tactics. "Remember," Jaiwan told his volunteers through the communicator, "this creature hunts by instinct. It expects prey to run away or hide. What it does not expect is for prey to become predators working together." Phase 2 began with carefully orchestrated chaos. Hygiene and other Luminar students created flashing light patterns that overloaded the stalker's visual processing systems. The Christine Collective generated harmonic resonances that disrupted the creature's ability to judge distances and directions. Chemical trails from the Verdani led it deeper into the processing core, away from any students. Throughout it all, one human moved with the patience of Persistence Hunter, gradually herding an apex predator into a trap that had taken millions of years of evolution to perfect. 30 minutes until military response arrives, announced the AI system. Jaiwan checked his improvised weapons. Electromagnetic pulse charges built from maintenance equipment would not kill the stalker, but they would stun it long enough for the next phase of his plan. "This is our moment," he told his pack through the communicator. "Hit it with everything we have planned. When it focuses on me, seal all the exits. Nothing leaves that chamber." Jaiwan, Hygiene's voice was tight with worry. "What if this does not work? What if—" "Trust the plan," he said simply, moving into final position above the processing core. "Trust the pack. And remember, humans did not survive by being the biggest monsters in the dark." Through the maintenance grating, he could see the Void Stalker below, confused and frustrated by the coordinated assault on its senses. It was exactly where he needed it to be. His smile was sharp as a predator's tooth. We survived by being the smartest ones. The trap was set. His pack was in position. The creature that had terrorized entire star systems was about to learn why Earth had produced the galaxy's most dangerous species. Not because humans were the strongest or the fastest, but because they had learned to fight like no other creature in the universe. Together, with intelligence, and with absolutely no intention of letting the monster win. The final phase was about to begin. The final confrontation lasted exactly 17 minutes and 23 seconds. What the hundreds of watching students saw on their security feeds changed everything they thought they knew about predator and prey relationships. The Void Stalker, a creature that had destroyed entire colonies and sent whole star systems into panic, found itself systematically outmaneuvered by a human who was barely 1/10 its size. Jaiwin did not fight the creature directly. That would have been certain death. Instead, he fought like a human, using tools, terrain, and intelligence in ways the galaxy had never seen before. When the stalker charged toward what it thought was trapped prey, Jaiwin was already gone. He had used the creature's own momentum to trigger industrial machinery that pinned two of its powerful limbs beneath tons of processing equipment. When it adapted and broke free, electromagnetic pulses from his improvised weapons disrupted its nervous system just long enough for chemical burns to eat through the weak joints in its armor. "This is impossible," whispered Professor Veltar, watching the feeds from his shelter. "No single organism should be able to defeat a Class Alpha predator." "He is not alone," Hygiene said, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with amazement. "Look at the coordination." She was right. Jaiwin's alien pack was moving with precision that impressed even the military observers who had begun monitoring the situation from their approaching ships. Each species contributed their unique abilities in perfect timing, turning the university's processing core into a trap more sophisticated than anything in their tactical manuals. The Christine Collective created harmonic disruptions that made the stalker stumble at exactly the right moments. Cloud wisps formed barriers that forced the creature toward Jaiwin's prepared positions. Verdani students released pheromones that masked movement and confused the predator's tracking abilities. Even the timid Klaxians helped by manipulating lighting systems to create blind spots. The Void Stalker, for all its evolutionary perfection, had never faced anything like this coordinated assault. Its instincts told it to hunt isolated prey, not organized groups that could turn their environment into weapons. Every move it made was anticipated, countered, and used against it. When the creature finally fell, stunned by electromagnetic pulses, blinded by chemical burns, and trapped beneath carefully positioned industrial equipment, Jaiwin approached it with the same calm patience he had shown throughout the entire crisis. Military response arriving in 2 minutes, announced the AI system. But the crisis was already over. Jaiwin knelt beside the fallen predator, checking for signs of permanent injury. His movements were careful and respectful, like a doctor examining a patient rather than a warrior standing over a defeated enemy. After a thorough inspection, he nodded with satisfaction. "It is unconscious but not seriously hurt," he reported through his communicator. "The military can relocate it safely to an appropriate habitat." Professor Veltar's voice carried a tone of absolute amazement. "You defeated a Void Stalker without killing it? How is that even possible?" "Killing should always be the last option," Jaiwin replied, treating a minor cut on his arm with supplies from his pack. "This creature was just following its nature. That does not make it evil. It was probably hungry or protecting territory." The blast doors throughout the station began unsealing as emergency responders flooded the building. Military personnel in heavy armor moved to the corridors, but they found only an unconscious predator and a calm human who was helping treat minor injuries among his alien classmates. The real change, however, was in how those classmates looked at him. The same students who had given him fearful glances and nervous whispers now watched him with something approaching wonder, not because he was dangerous, though they now understood he could be when necessary, but because he had used that potential for violence to protect those who could not protect themselves. Hygiene reached him first, her bioluminescent patterns showing complex emotions that had no names in human language. "How did you know you could do that?" she asked. "How did you know it would work?" Jaiwin considered the question seriously as he finished bandaging his arm. "I did not know," he admitted, But my species learned long ago that impossible just means no one has figured out how to do it yet. In the days that followed, everything changed at Nexus Prime University. Jaiwin's tactical analysis of the Void Stalker became required reading in xenobiology courses across the galaxy. His coordination techniques were studied by military academies on 100 worlds. Most importantly, the way different species had worked together under his leadership became a new model for interstellar cooperation. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed humans as a whole. They were still Deathworlders, violent and dangerous, shaped by millions of years of evolutionary warfare. But now the galaxy understood that this evolution had created something unique in the universe. A species that could switch between gentle protector and apex predator, depending on what the situation required. Your people, Professor Veltar said during a private conversation weeks later, they are not just dangerous. They are responsibly dangerous. Jaiwin nodded, understanding the distinction. That is what civilization means to us. Not the absence of violence, but knowing exactly when to use it and when to show mercy. As news of the incident spread throughout the galaxy, humanity's reputation evolved from terrifying Deathworlders to be avoided at all costs to terrifying Deathworlders you definitely want fighting beside you. And in classrooms across thousands of worlds, when students learn about predator-prey relationships, they also learned about the human, who proved that sometimes the most dangerous species in the galaxy is also the most willing to risk everything to save others. The universe had gained its most unlikely guardians.